One of the questions I was asked by one of my connections on LinkedIn, who said this is a problem being faced by many in the immigration community. The question was, I have gone to my home country for an H-1B, or let's call it any employment-based visa stamping. So I am in my home country. Now, I'm waiting for the visa stamping. What happens as and when I get laid off during this process? So let's examine. Number one, I am, let's say in India. I've gone to India. I've applied for my H-1B visa, but before the interview or before the decision, I get laid off. Now what do I do with that visa if it is granted? Okay. So this is a difficult question to answer. And if you have a Dropbox appointment where you didn't actually have to personally go in, what if you get the visa stamping? Is that appropriate? I have my problem with that. Because technically, before you got stamped, you got laid off. So is that stamp still valid? On the other hand, there's an argument to be made that on the date you applied for a visa, you still had a job. So this I would give the mark of a 50-50. I'm not sure I can say that this is a valid visa stamp. Now, one thing is clear. In such a situation, you should not return to the United States using that visa stamp because you no longer have that job. That would be my recommendation. However, can it be argued that I have 60 days grace period or I'm still getting paid? Can I come back on this? Very murky. I'm not sure there is a clear answer. My advice would be to take the most conservative route. If you are keeping that visa stamp, don't travel back on it until you have another approval. So if another employer gets you an H-1B, they process the H-1B, I think it's far safer to then travel using the visa stamp that was granted while you were laid off and the new approval. I think you are reasonably safe at that point of time. Now, let's take another scenario. Let's say that you have received your H-1B visa stamp, you are still outside USA, and you got laid off. Can you then return? And my advice would be probably not a good idea to return even though you have 60 days. But what if you are getting paid in the meantime? Can you come back? I think this is a more difficult question to answer because if I remember the regulation correctly, you're not allowed to travel during those 60 days if you were in the United States. Then why would you be allowed to travel back into the US? So my recommendation would be do not travel until you get another H-1B visa stamp. Another H-1B approval. So you can use the same visa stamp. So if the visa stamp is granted after you got laid off, it's more murky. But if you get laid off after the H-1B visa gets granted, you should be okay to travel after you get a new H-1B approval. Okay, so that's why this connection of mine, she reached out to lawyers at various companies where she was working, some of the big ones, and she couldn't get a clear answer. And this is as clear as I can get, and I hope this helps you folks. Okay, good luck. Oh, one thing I want to add, you are certainly not subject to H-1B quota again, unless the H-1B gets revoked before October 1st if you are in the lottery. This individual is not in the lottery.